Welcome to another edition of Viper's Voices presented by Murphy Batista LLP Personal Injury Lawyers. My guest this week is Ed Johnstone, former Vernon Laker coach, was the coach of the national championship team, but also a year with the Vernon Essos. Ed, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you, Graham.
Let's talk about it a little bit. I mean, what a spectacular career you've had, looking through the numbers, making some notes. But let's sort of start back at the beginning. I mean, born in Brandon, Manitoba, and then I imagine you got a start like most kids did, playing minor hockey in that area. Sort of walk us through what it was like growing up in Brandon. It seems a little frigid, you know, if you were to just guess.
Well, didn't stay there long. I think we left there when I was 2. My dad was a truck driver, so we kind of went wherever he was going, and so we left Brandon, like I said, when I was about 2, and then we ended up in Vancouver, and we were in Vancouver for a few years, and then we moved to Dawson Creek, and that's where I kind of started.
Dawson Creek, what a great spot. I mean, did you sort of know, and again, we're going to get into this, but with such a great hockey career that you had, did you always kind of know that you wanted to be a hockey player when you were growing up, when you settled in Dawson Creek and got an opportunity to play? Because it's not a big place to play. Typically, you see a lot of players come from bigger metropolitan areas where there's lots of opportunity. I mean, for you, when did you first fall in love with the game?
Well, when we were still in Brandon, I don't remember. I was pretty small. I was really tiny. And my dad was a goaltender. He played for the old senior team in Brandon at the time, and the Detroit Red Wings for a few years there. I'm told they came into town and did like an exhibition at a day's training camp or something similar to that. Then they always played a game against the senior team, and Gordie Howe lit up my dad for about 6 that night, so I'm told. And after the game, of course, they had a party, and I got Gordie Howe's. I used to ride around on my dad's shoulders all the time, and I got Gordie Howe's autograph on a a paper Mickey bottle bag, a brown bag, and that always kind of stuck with me. I didn't really know who he was. And as the years went on, I watched, and I said, hey, I met that guy. And really, that's really all I wanted to do from that time on.
You, I mean, that's a great story. Do you still have or know where that Mickey Mouse lunch bag box went with the signature? Is that still an heirloom?
Actually, I think I do. I have a trunk full of, it's just full of newspapers and all that kind of stuff. And I'm pretty sure it's in there. I'm going to have to go through all that stuff one of these days and see if it is still there. But I'm sure it's around somewhere. I wouldn't have got rid of it.
No, definitely not. I mean, as we sort of go through it, I mean, you ended up playing 4 years of junior hockey, 1 year in Vernon. So you ended up in BC. I mean, back then in 1970, 71, they were the Vernon Essos. How did you end up here? What was the recruitment process like for you? And, you know, I guess when you were in Dawson Creek, were people able to see you, or had you sort of moved and transitioned from there?
We had moved. We moved here. We moved to Vernon when I was, I want to say 9 or 10, maybe 11, somewhere's in there. And then I continued playing minor hockey. I played, I believe I played four years of Bantam AAA, because in Dawson Creek we didn't have enough players, and back then if you didn't play in the AAA league, you end up just kind of kicking around and playing house and all that kind of stuff. So they kind of put you where you could play. So when I had moved here, I'd already played a year at Bantam AAA, and so I was still Pewee age, and so when I went to register for minor hockey, of course, that's where they put me, and so I went home, and my dad had a meeting with the powers to be back then, and he said, "Hey, he's played Bantam already. Let him try. If he can't make her, send him down." So I stayed in Bantam, and well, like I said, then I think I played like 4 years of Bantam rep because they wouldn't move me up. So it was, and then I played 1 year of midget, and then being a local boy, it was a pretty easy sell to get me to come play for the Essos.
How fun was it to sort of get in there? I love to ask guys who have sort of grown up in the community that, have put the Viper sweater on, or, the Laker jersey, or whatever the case was. For you, what was that experience like for you? Because again, you, as much of a local as just because you weren't born here, but you spent a good chunk of your time here. What was it like to throw the jersey on for the first time?
Oh, it's great. It was definitely a step in the right direction for me. And I always prided myself in working hard and doing the little things of the game. I was pretty fortunate. I could always score, and that just seemed to come natural. But I kind of took more pride in keeping the puck out of my net than actually scoring goals, and I really kind of prided myself in that. And Vern Dye and Odie Lowe at the time, they gave me a chance to play, and back then we had a pretty good team. I ended up playing on line with Jimmy Lawrence and Wayne Dye, and we all had really good years.
And sort of looking at that, I mean, I've got your numbers in front of me. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm trying to do the math. You're about 16 years old in 70, 71, 45 goals, 49 assists, 94 points. It's pretty good. Pretty good numbers for a young guy making his junior hockey debut.
Well, like I said, I really prided myself in working hard and doing the little things, and I was fortunate. I had some pretty good coaches along the way, and I was always taught good defense makes for good offense, and so that's kind of the way I approached it.
You the next year, though, you end up in what eventually becomes the WHL. The WCHL is what it was called back then. What was it like? I mean, we know what it's like today, where a lot of players have an opportunity to play Junior A, and it can propel them to the NCAA ranks. And once you play in the Western Hockey League, you're no longer eligible for that. Was it the same back then? And what was the decision process like for you to leave Vernon and end up going to Medicine Hat?
Well, it was probably worse. If you went to training camp at a WHA team back then, and I think if you played like one exhibition game, you weren't eligible to play NCAA. And back then it was, if you didn't play major junior, your chances of playing pro after that were pretty slim. So, so it really wasn't much of a decision for me. It was what I wanted to do. And but my problem was I was probably loyal to a fault. And it's kind of an interesting story, because when I went to Medicine Hat the first year I went there, I had a great camp. Like I had a great camp, and played a couple of exhibition games, and I was scoring and everything else. And I was the first guy cut, and I just couldn't believe it. Like I said, I don't understand this. And so then I came back to Vernon, and like I said, I had a great year, my first year. And so I go to Medicine Hat again, and same thing. My name was the first one on the list, and I was really getting frustrated with all this. So I came home and played here and again. And when they called me January 1st, I thought they were kidding. I thought it was somebody playing a joke on me. And they said, no, we really want you to come. And I told them no. And so they hummed and hawed, and they asked me if I could maybe explain why. And so I told them. And they said, well, we understand that the circumstances. And so anyway, I went and I had a talk with Odie, and had a really good long conversation with Odie Lowe. And he told me, he said, look, he said, if you're going to try and make it in this game, he said, you have an opportunity here to go. And he more or less told me to get the hell out of Dodge, you know. And so then I get a call from the GM at the time. And being a local kid, of course, they couldn't pay any money, but they could pay your room and board, but they never did for local kids. And I had to buy my own first pair of skates in junior, and they said no, that just wasn't how they did things. Well, boy, you should have seen. I could have got anything I wanted. I could have got, all my room and board paid for, and I told them, nope. I said, I'm going. And so I did. And the rest just kind of fell into place.
Looking through that's pretty crazy to see how the game's changed. But ironically enough, the rule, the WHL rule and the NCAA, it's the same. One exhibition game and you lose your eligibility. So they've kept it pretty consistent. I was looking through the Medicine Hat Tigers lineup, and one name jumped out at me in 72-73 and as well as in 73-74. Lanny McDonald, the pretty phenomenal hockey player. The mustachioed Lanny McDonald. What was it like playing with a guy like that? And obviously you both had great NHL careers. What was it like to play with him?
Lanny was, he was a really good player, and he was a great team guy. He stuck up for you all the time, and he just brought that energy and that want to win and that want to play. And, like I said, we had a pretty good team there. We had Tommy Lysiak was, in my opinion, could have been one of the best players in our National Hockey League. He could do it all, and then we had Lanny, and then of course then we had some tough guys, Bobby Gassoff and Jim McCrimmon and Brian Maxwell and the other two Gassoff boys. And, it was, we had a real solid rounded team. If you wanted to skate and go up and down and do that kind of stuff, we could do that. If you wanted to brawl, we could do that too. And if you wanted to get down and just muck and grind, and we could do that. So it was, it was just one of those teams that we should have won the Memorial Cup. But as it turned out, we got beat out by goals for and goals against. So it was, that was a bit of a downer. And then, like I said, that was Lanny and Tommy's draft year. And so the following year was those guys were gone, and it was an interesting year for me that year. I always had a bit of a temper, and I would, I never took a back seat to anybody, and I didn't care how big he was. It was, if it was time to go, we were going to dance. And I'll never forget it. Jim McCrimmon and Bobby Gassoff and all those pretty tough guys, they pulled me aside and they said, EJ, said, you don't have to fight. He said, you just hit him with your stick. He said, we'll take care of it. I said, okay. So the next year they were all gone. Some of those other guys had long memories. I think I scored like 64 goals my draft year, and I think I had, well, I don't know, I had well over 150 minutes of penalties. I probably could have scored 80 if I'd have stayed out of the box a little more. But
164.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot.
I probably, like I said, I probably could have scored 80 if I'd have stayed out of the box, but that wasn't me.
Well, what's interesting about it too is in 1974, so that's your draft year, 64, 54 for 118 is what you had. But you got drafted twice. Walk us through what that process is like, because you got drafted by the NHL, the New York Rangers, 104th overall in the 6th round. That same year, you get drafted in the WHA amateur draft, 6th round, 78th overall by the Michigan Stags. What is that back then? What was that process like? It seems like a pretty amazing thing to get drafted by two teams, two professional leagues. What was that process like for you?
Well, that's just the way they did it. You know, they were competing with each other, and in my case, the Rangers, I spoke with them, and my agent spoke with them, and they wouldn't offer me a contract. They wanted me to come to camp and kind of see what happened. And the WHA, Michigan, they offered me a contract, a 3-year deal. So I said, well, I think to start with, I think that's probably not a bad thing. And so I went to Michigan's camp, and it was myself and a French Canadian kid played in the Quebec League. We both made the team as rookies. And I had a little clause in my contract. I got like a tiny bonus if I played 25 games. I played 23, and they sent me down to Greensboro, North Carolina. Wow. That was something down there, I'll tell you. It was that was more or less just Brawl City. And it was interesting. Like, you know, I think I played 21 games or something. I think I scored 23 goals. Like, I mean, the hockey wasn't very good, but you learned, like, because you learned to stay out of trouble. You know, you didn't want to be dangling with your head down, cutting across the middle, because somebody's going to get you. And so, you know, and then they run into some financial problems, and Greensboro was paying a portion of my minor league salary to the big club. And the big club was using that money to pay the guys up there. So consequently, I lost some money, not very much, not as much as some of the guys did. So anyway, I end up, the agent we had, Lanny had him, Tommy Lysak, pretty much all the guys out of Medicine had the same guy. And he ended up going to jail. And so the money that I lost wasn't nearly what some of those other first rounders lost. So it wasn't. So then I got another agent, and so he talked to New York. And I have to thank Ronnie Greshner quite a bit for this, because Ronnie Greshner was a real solid defenseman, and he'd played a year or so with New York, and he's pretty much established himself. And so Emile Francis, and I played against Gresh ever since I could ever remember. I played against him when I played junior. I played against him in the Western League. And so anyway, the cat went and asked him, you know, what he thought of me. And Gresh told him, he said, I wanted him on my team, not playing against me. So they signed me, and from there, they sent me down to in January. It was about January. I went to Providence, Rhode Island, and they had first place locked up already. They had a really good team. They were Boston's farm team and New York's, and we ended up getting beat out in the first round by Springfield. And the next year, I went to New York's camp, and then I got sent down to New Haven, Connecticut, and I had a real good year in New Haven. And then the following year, I pretty much stuck with New York.
Pretty unbelievable too, because in 75, 76, you had a pretty good year with Providence, but you did get 10 games with the Rangers. I mean, I got to ask, you're from small town BC, and now you're living in the Carolinas, you're living in Rhode Island, you're living in, New York City. What was your first experience like in New York when you get there? I imagine, pretty bright-eyed. And what do you remember vividly about your first NHL game?
Well, terrified is a very good word. I'd take a cab from the airport to the arena, and it seemed like it took forever. And it was very expensive. I remember that. And then by the time I got my receipt and got everything straightened away, and I went straight to the locker room, because they called me up game day. And so then I didn't. I dressed. I didn't play very much, and then it was, I don't know. I can't remember exactly how many games it was into those 10, but we were playing Toronto, and I hadn't played yet. It was about 6 minutes left to go in the first period, and somebody got hurt and was struggling to get off the ice, and I just happened to be sitting right in front of the cat, and he just said, tap me on the shoulder, and away I went, and the puck went into our end. I think Brad Park went around the net, threw it up to Pete Demkowski on the wing, and no, he threw it to Walter in the middle first, and then it went to Pete on the wing, and I just went to the net, and I tipped it in top shelf on Wayne Thomas. I never played again the rest of the night.
You're batting 1,000 on that in that game then.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at the roster for that too. John Davidson, who is now the president in the NHL. Phil Esposito was on that team as well. You're playing with legendary hockey players. When you're playing with them, did they have those personalities back then, or did you get a sense that those guys would have careers that they ended up having or were currently having and have since moved on from there?
Oh yeah. You could tell, it was Espo was really good. He didn't like to check very much, but he wanted the puck, and he wanted the puck all the time. And if he didn't get it and he was open, he had a tendency of letting you know. And but he could really score, and then we had, like JD was. I played against JD in Calgary when he was with I don't remember what they were called back then. Calgary. Anyway, he was playing Major Junior, and then we picked JD up in, let's see, that would have been 72. Medicine Hat represented Canada in the World Cup in Colorado Springs. Our Olympic team or something was tied up, and they were doing something else. So, and at that time we were ranked really high in the thing, and just so happened our schedule fell at a good time. So we were allowed to pick up players. So we took JD out of Calgary, and we picked up Bernie Lukowich. Oh, jeepers. I'm trying to remember now. Anyway, we picked up Dennis Sobchuk out of Regina. And so we go down and we played against the same team that played Team Canada in 72. That was a team that we played from Russia. They were pretty good. Yeah. They beat us 9-3. And they had that Valery Karlamov, that great big defenseman Raglan, and Tretiak was a goal. He was really something, that Tretiak. I came down the wing and I took a little peek. I wound up, let her go, and I had half the net to shoot at on the far side. And then I put my head down. He moved over and he just stood there, and I hit him right in the middle of the pads. I'll be damned if I didn't get another chance. Down I go again. Same thing. Took a little look, and I had a lot on that side. And something said, nope, don't shoot it there. So I fired it. What should have been short side. I hit the center bar and scored. That's how far he'd moved over. And then I got a tip in on him. And then I think we beat the Americans. I think we beat the Czechs. I don't remember for sure, but I think we did. And it was just a really great tournament and great time. And you got to know some of the other guys like JD and Sobchuk, all those guys. And that's something that you keep for a long time. And then I ended up playing New York with JD, and we were pretty tight back then. Yeah. Him and I were pretty tight. I still talk to him occasionally. Not as much now that he's the GM, but
right. Yeah, he's a little busy these days.
A little tough to get a hold of him these days. Talk to him about the weather.
Exactly. Now you've got the hat on, and you spent a number of years with the Rangers. As we go through your playing career, you ended up in Detroit after that, which is interesting because we've had Ken Holland on the show. Obviously, everybody knows what he's done in his post-playing career, but you were on his team briefly. He ended up suiting up for 3 games with you guys in 83, 84.
Yep.
And he tells some funny stories about his first experiences in the NHL and things of that nature. I mean, you guys were both from Vernon. Do you remember the overlap there?
Oh yeah. It was I think I played more with Kenny, I think, in Adirondack after I got in like 84, 85. But I remember he came up in 83, and we just kind of chit-chatted and talked, and said, and I tried to help him out a little bit, and as best I could, but he was he's done very, very well for himself. Very well. He's a smart hockey guy, and he probably got the most out of his ability. So he did good.
It's a pretty special thing, though, isn't it, to think Vernon's population right now about 30,000 people, maybe a little bit more if you include surrounding areas. Back when you were growing up, I would imagine it was smaller than that. So to see a couple of guys from the same neighborhood cross paths in Detroit and Adirondack, that had to be pretty special.
It was really special. It doesn't happen all the time, and it just kind of, I think it kind of showed on our upbringing coming up through minor hockey and all that kind of stuff, and how we were taught and all that kind of stuff. Because there was some good people around here, some very, very knowledgeable hockey guys back in the day, and they all helped, so that was really special.
You finished your playing career in 86, 87 with Adirondack, and you got 6 games in with Detroit. You finished your NHL career with 122 goals, 136 assists, and 258 points. I mean, when you sort of look back on it, that's a really good NHL career. When you got your first game in the NHL to the time you decided to hang up the skates, you know, how satisfied were you with the way your playing career went? Because you got to do something that many kids just dream of.
Like I said before, it's very special. It's rare you get to do something that you love to do and make a little bit of money at it and be successful, and like I said, it was really all I ever wanted to do, and I had to work very, very hard. I got a couple breaks along the way because, back then, if you were 5'9", 170 pounds, she was tough sledding. It was real tough sledding back in those days. And as far as was I satisfied with? No, I don't think you're ever satisfied. I think, like I said, I think I could have done some things a little bit different. Probably the biggest thing I think is if I had to do it all over again, I may get some things fixed along the way instead of just being so scared somebody's going to come and take my job that it, even if it was broke and it didn't hurt too bad, I was going to play. And, that was just kind of the reputation I had. And I think it shortened my career by a little bit, and I'm paying for it today.
That's kind of a thing with a lot of the hockey community. It seems like there are a lot of guys that will go through a lot of punishment, a lot of pain for the short-term gain of it, but long-term, it tends to catch up with them. At what point did you start to feel that? Was it later in your playing career where you started to feel the effects of those? And as you mentioned, obviously today and things like that.
Pretty much. It was when I got traded from New York and went to Detroit, and Detroit didn't have a very good team. It was Stevie Eiserman's first year in the league. And, and I was fortunate I got to play with him. And I'm quite proud of the fact that I got Stevie Y his first point in National Hockey League. And I assisted on his first goal. So that was pretty special because you knew right away he was going to be a special player.
I was going to ask you about that. Obviously, everybody knows about the leader that he's become, but in his first year, and Ken Holland talked about it when we spoke with him too. There was just something about him. Despite the fact that the team wasn't very good, you just felt like there was something special about him.
Oh yeah, without question. He came to play every night, and he played the game the way the game's supposed to be played. And he just he was a little fortunate when he came in '83. The game had started to change a little bit. They were starting to cut down a little bit on the clutching and the grabbing, and they put the instigator rule in, and they were trying, and I think it made Stevie's job easier because he could skate really well and he could handle a puck good, and his hockey IQ was out of this world, and he just he played the game the way the game was supposed to be played.
What point did you realize, because I imagine it was a short window, so you wrap up in 86, 87, the next year you resurface in Vernon as an assistant on the Lakers. Did you know that coaching was going to be something that you wanted to do? Did you sort of fall into it? Did somebody, twist your arm a certain way? What was the process like when it came to getting back on the bench, but this time behind it?
Well, it was. It actually started a little before that. Let's see, I believe it was like '85. I think I was one of the oldest guys in the American League at the time. And we had a good team in Adirondack. Bill Deneen was the coach. And we had a committee. There was myself, Glenn Murkowski, he was the captain, Barry Melrose, and Jordy Robertson. 1, 2, 3, 4, one more. And I think Greg Jolly. We were the committee. And so Bill would come to practice and he would say, call us in. And he'd say, guys, what do you think? Oh, we'd sit down and we'd tell him what we thought. And, and Melrose was always full of ideas, stuff to work on, And so, we pretty much got things going. And so then we go out and we'd practice and Bill was one of those guys that he would designate, like we did even back then, like we did a ton of flow stuff, and like it was all flow, just go flow, counter, and so I had a dot, Bubba had a dot. Well, us 5 guys, we all had dots, eh? The two end dots, and the center ice. My dot was on the left-hand side in the corner, and we stand there and pass pucks most of practice. Because but then when it come time to play, we couldn't get off the ice. It was Bill just he knew who he could count on, and he used us all the time. And then from there it kind of, and then in the year I retired, Robbie Fatorik was the coach in Adirondack, and he called me and asked me if I would come back and play as an assistant playing coach. And I said, Fitzy, how much am I going to play? He said, probably a lot. I said, Fitzy, can't do it anymore. Just can't. I just can't do it. My body is not letting me do it. So, and it's it's a little bit ironic because like about 15 games into the season, he gets a job in LA. So I probably could have stepped up and been the head coach then in Adirondack, but I wasn't in the cards that year. And so from then on, I says, hey, maybe I can do this thing. And so figured I'd give it a try. I figured I'd start small and see what happened. And Mel List give me an opportunity, and I just carried on from there.
And what do you remember being excited? I mean, obviously at that time, it seems like it's come full circle. You started your junior hockey career there, now you're starting your coaching career there as well. I mean, how much of a benefit, how exciting was it? I mean, obviously there's probably a ton of different emotions. Your body's telling you that you can't play anymore. We've got a lot to offer in terms of knowledge and things like that. How gratifying was it to get that opportunity? And what do you remember about getting behind the bench and being an assistant? Obviously very different than being a head guy, but just being there and being able to take it in, but from a different perspective.
Well, I had to pay my dues there too. The first year, I wasn't behind the bench. I was upstairs. I did all the pregame stuff. Like I would, I'd take down the other team's lines, their defensive pairings, and all that kind of stuff. And I'd take it down to Ernie, and then he would see who he was going to, if he was going to try and match lines, see who he's going to put against who and that type of thing. And then, if I saw something during the game, I'd go down between periods and tell them, and I'd like to think I helped out, and it was exciting, and I always got along good with the players. I was kind of like the go between, on the ice. If Ernie was mad at a couple of the players, or a couple of players were mad at Ernie, I usually kind of had to feel it out from both ends and kind of try and smooth it over. That was interesting.
You were only an assistant though for a year.
Yeah.
Changes. Now you're the head guy, and back then I don't know what the recruiting process was like, but it's a lot of work to put together a junior A roster. I mean, for a guy who's getting their first kick at it, you were obviously the next man up and the perfect person to take over. Was it a bit of an eye opener for you to become the head coach? And it's funny because you were looking at the roster from this was 88, 89. You've got Tony Szabo from Flint, Michigan. You've got Corey Carlson from Anchorage, Rob Atkinson from Moncton, New Brunswick. I mean, these aren't close. And the technology being what it was, how are you able to see some of these guys? What were some of the components that went into putting a team together that was good? That was the other thing. Your teams were always good. Was that something you just sort of picked up on the fly, or did you have enough contacts that helped you put it together?
No, I didn't. I didn't have the contacts. That was Mel. Mel knew everybody. He knew everybody all across Canada, United States, and he had a reputation of treating the kids good, and that word of mouth just went crazy. He had guys phoning him all the time, and then we'd sit down and we'd talk about a player, and he'd ask me, well, I don't know. I talked to this guy, and I kind of respect what he says, and he says he's a really good player, and so I had a few guys I could call, and I did. I give as much input as I could, but it was mostly all Mel as far as the recruiting and that goes. He was probably the most unique GM and owner that I've ever seen in all my career, and I don't think you'll ever see another GM / owner that does the stuff that Mel did, and the way he treated those kids. It was I got mad at him sometimes. I said, Mel, you got to back down a little bit, and he'd just go, yeah, I know, but and I said, yeah, okay, Mel, so he was he knew everybody, and everybody knew him, and like I said, the kids all wanted to come play because they knew they were going to be treated good
and win. Yeah, I was going to say winning's probably got to play a part of that. So your first year as head coach is 88, 89. We went through this with Dave Oliver a couple of weeks ago because that was his first year on the team. And it was very, very cool. It was the first time, surprisingly, that we'd had a chance to talk about the 90 championship team. We've talked about some of the other national championships. But one of the interesting things that he said was in 88, 89, it was the perfect trial run for what was to come the year after, because looking through it, I mean, there's a long playoff run that you guys had to go through, the 3 BC JHL rounds, the Mowat Cup, the Doyle Cup, the Abbott Cup, and then you had to go all the way out east, if I'm not mistaken, to play in the Centennial Cup. For you as your first go-round behind the bench, what were some of the ups and downs like of what is, and in actuality, was a marathon run for you guys?
It was, I believe I was still an assistant coach when we went out to Summerside that first year. I didn't take over until the following year because we, and that was the year we hosted the team or we hosted the tournament. That was my first year there. Or no, I don't know. All those years kind of you start scrambling together, but anyway, it was, we had to play an awful lot of hockey, and that was just a tribute to the guys. I mean, they came to play every night, and we did the best we could to prepare them each night, and and we were fortunate. We had a pretty good club too.
What's interesting too is that, in 87-88, the team goes 42-10. 88-89, the year you guys make it to the Centennial Cup in Summerside, falling short. You guys were 40-19-1. And then the year that you host the national championship in 89-90, actually, statistically, the worst year out of the three. You win 33 games. And Dave was sort of mentioning that you guys went 500 in your first 25 games. It was like 13-12 or 12-13. And then it seemed like the team was struggling to get out of the gate. Do you remember what it was like? Because hosting a national championship, there's a prestige and there's an expectation. And to go 500 in the first half, just under half of the season, it's not going to cut it.
Well, we didn't get off to a very good start. I think I'm not sure about the numbers, but I think we were like 2-8 or 2-9. And Mel made a couple changes, and I think we won 11 in a row after that, and then we just kind of built on that, and we just kept going. That was the year New West had just a phenomenal team. Like, I mean, they had a really, really solid bunch of players, and the year before it was that year. I think they only lost like 2 games in the playoffs, and they're both to us, and then so they ended up beating us in the BCs, and so then we come back home, and it was so Mel and I had been talking, and like I said, this is the kind of guy that Mel is. He said, "What are you thinking?" And our farm team at the time was Invermere, the Junior B, Eddie Mountain League. And they were still playing, but they really didn't think they were going to last too much longer. So Mel said, "Yeah, well," he said, "You know what we're going to do?" He says, "We're going to go to Invermere. We're going to spend 2 weeks in Invermere." And I go, "Really?" "Yeah." He said, "That's what we're going to do." I said, "Okay." I said, so he sets it all up, and I never forget, we get off the bus in New West, from New West. It was early in the morning, and I told them all I didn't want to see anybody. I think that was a Sunday. I told them I don't want to see anybody until Thursday. I said, "I don't want to see you. Just go." I said, "Practice Thursday night." So they come to practice, and in shorts and flip-flops, and it was nice weather. And I says, "Okay, here's the plan." I said, we're leaving Saturday morning. We're going to Invermere." "Oh, what are we going there for?" I said, "Well, because we're going to go. We're going to play." "Oh, okay." So I sent them all home. And so they showed up to get on the bus in shorts and flip-flops. Yeah. We get to Invermere, and there's snow on the ground, and it's cold. And so we went 2 weeks. We went 2 days, and Invermere got beat out on Friday. I'll say that Friday. And so we get there on Saturday, or somewhere in there. And the first practice was in the morning, with just my guys. And then in the afternoon, well, of course, I put 3 or 4 of our Junior B guys on our roster, which you could do. And so then in the afternoon, we had a scrimmage. We scrimmaged against them, but I switched them. I took a line of ours and give it to them, and took a line from there, and so on and so forth, so that our guys were playing against our guys, and so on. And so we did that. We did that for a week, every day. And by the end of that week, the boys are ready to kill each other. And so then a bunch of the Junior B guys all packed up and went home. So then we went back, and we did about 3 or 4 more days of just one-a-days. And I'm not for sure. But I know in those 4 practices there was at least 5 fights. They were going to kill each other. So we came home, and I gave them 3 days, and then we had another week where we didn't play. We're getting ready to host, and so they came back, and we went 1 a days, and we went hard. We went really hard, and by the time the tournament rolled around, we were a bunch of very, very angry people. And we had a good draw. We drew Thunder Bay in the first round, and they had a big, tough, pretty skilled team, but not really fast, And it was a great game. It was just a bang, bang, crash, boom kind of a game, and we ended up beating them. And then, I can't remember who we played after that. And we won. We beat everybody except New West. New West beat us in the round robin. So, but so that was. I remember what it was. We played some. They had a small team, but they were really fast, and so we played the tough big team, and then we played the real fast skilled team. So it really kind of got us ready. And then we played New West and lost New West in that. And then we played Thunder Bay, I think, in the semis, and we beat them like 8 or 9 to 1 or something. I can't remember. It was bad, and I kept saying, "Guys, just save a bunch of those. We're going to need them tomorrow." And the rest is just kind of history. It was something.
Well, and it's funny, when I spoke with Dave, that he remembers that championship game like it was yesterday, and he said,
Yep.
Time sort of disappears. Is that the same way you remember it? Obviously, it's legendary for so many different reasons, but to be at home, to win the way you guys did, he says he can vividly remember almost all of it, and that includes the high stick that he took late in the game to get that power play. But for you, because I've asked players or coaches before, the hardest thing is you don't have any control over the game. Being a player in games like that is almost easier. You have your job, you do your job, you move forward. As a coach, it's all on the players at that point. What do you remember about one of, if not the most memorable games in franchise history?
Well, in warm up, I was like Mel. He was wandering around chomping on that cigar. He never lit it up. He just chewed it. And I remember the fire marshal, and I thought it was so funny. I stand beside Mel. We were talking about something. The boys are out there warming up, and the fire marshal came in and had a looked back over at Mel, and he said, "Mel, I'll be back in a couple hours." And he laughed. Well, you couldn't put another person in there. They were like 3 deep around the top. And then everything after that was kind of pretty much a business as usual until Kunze got that 5-minute major. Right at the end of the second period, New West was getting a penalty. I think we were down 5-2 then, and Kunze was coming to the bench, and I'm really good with numbers. I'm not too good with names. Number 11 from New West, he was just kind of floating back in front of our bench, and Kunze just slashed him. Oh, it was vicious. So they had a 2-minute minor, and we got the major. We got the 5. So we got through the end of the second, and I went back in the locker room, and I didn't say nothing. I just like I do all the time. I just walked through. I didn't say anything. I tapped a couple guys, just kept going. And Kunze was not well. He was he flipped, and he just wasn't there. And so I go into our little office in there, and Mel's sitting there, and he's just chomping away at that cigar. And he says to me, "You're going to put Cootsie back in, aren't you?" And I said, "I'll let you know in about 2 minutes." So I went out, wandered around for a couple of minutes, and went back in the locker room, and Cootsie was still gone somewhere. And so I still didn't say nothing. Walked out to the little corner where the ice where we go out. And standing there. I can't remember who it was came out. I looked up at the clock, and there was like 3 minutes left in the intermission. So back in I go, and pulled Garth Geddes and Cam Sylvan aside, and I said, "Okay, look," I said, this is what New West does on their power play. I said, "You all know what they're doing. They had that Darwin McCullen offensive zone faceoff, and they always let him take the draw, and all he would do was tie up the centerman, and then they get the puck and they work it around. And they had just a fantastic power play." So I told Garth, I said, "We do this in practice. We screw around, and just chip it through his legs, step around him, because you know he's going to try and interfere with you. Just step around. Cammy, you're gone." Garth just laid it out there. I couldn't have drew it up and in practice and got him going in there. And so Garth goes down. He falls down. Way goes Cammy. He's got kind of semi breakaway, and Cammy could really skate. And Garth got up and he chugged down the ice all the way hard as he could go. And Cammy got a shot on goal, and Cadden was the goalie, and he left a rebound, and Garth buried it to make it 5-3. And after that, New West really wasn't in it after that. And I think I don't know if it was Davey or Dwayne Dennis scored the fourth goal, and then we tied it up. And the last 4 minutes of the game, New West didn't get out of their end. I mean, Davey and Dwayne, they should have both won it easy, and it just didn't happen. That would go into overtime, and Mikey Dennis, we had a bit of a kerfuffle just outside our blue line, and puck went over Mark Carpin, and he had a gazillion points that year. He was their big gun. He gets the puck, and he's coming in at a bad angle, and he winds up, and Murray King comes out, and he goes, oh, now Carpy's going to go around the net, and Murray's got the lead going. Murray falls down, away he goes. If Carpy had just come around hard and tucked in the open net, it was over, but he took the lazy way around, and Mikey Dennis almost killed him. He just annihilated him. And then I think it was probably the next shift or a shift later, Darwin McCullen, they're Mr. Everything. He's got the puck at center ice, and he goes like this, and he's going to pull it in. Cammy poked it off his stick, and away he goes. Cammy's got a breakaway from, our side of the red line. And you could have heard a pin drop in that building. It just went dead silence. At least that's what it seemed like to me. Everything just kind of stopped. And if Cam had scored on a quarter of his breakaways over the course of the year, he just scored 60 goals. And I'll never forget it. He just where he went, I could tell exactly what was going through his mind. He got to the blue line, inside the blue line, and he stopped like this, and he just skated in like this. And and their goaltender, like he kind of lost where he was a little bit, and he kind of, when he came out, he got going too far over, and Cammy just had it right here like this. He just went pew, and top shelf, almost hit the center bar. And then I think that it's no wonder that old roof had leaks in it, because I'm sure we lifted it up about a foot. And that was pretty exciting. Yeah.
I had the chance to call one game there. It was the last one when they celebrated the Civic, and it was packed there too. It was one of those nights where the players had never seen a full barn for warm-up before. You know, it was that crazy. I mean, for you, I mean, as loud as it probably was on the bench, I mean, what's your reaction? Is it silent vibration? Is it jubilation? Is it shock and awe? I mean, what, because you know what the players are doing, they're all celebrating and stuff. And obviously you're happy to be there and everybody's, I mean, it seems like one of those things that you'll never forget. But what was your reaction when it happened?
It was like, I mean, I was so happy, but I really tried to just stay as calm as I possibly could, because everybody else was going a little nuts. And I thought Keith Chase was going to kill somebody when he just getting onto the ice. And so I just, I just kind of stood there, and I kind of just said a couple things to myself, and I just let the players have their time. It's something you never forget. Pretty special.
When you look back on it, because your coaching career wasn't done, you had a couple more years with the Lakers, and then you went to the ECHL in Johnstown and Mobile and Cincinnati. Where does that moment rank, though, in your overall career? Because again, as we started this conversation off, we started in the 70s and went all the way through. I mean, forgive me if I'm speaking out of turn, but that's got to be the pinnacle of victory, hometown, national championship. Am I wrong in thinking that?
No, you're really close. There was that ranks right up there. Like, that was it's really hard to say it was the best, because as a player, I won a championship when I was playing in the American League in '85 in Adirondack, and like I said, I was the oldest player in the American League, and I carried that trophy around for about 3 days. It never left the only time it left my hands was to sit on the bar and get filled up so we could have a drink out of it. But that was from a playing standpoint and a coaching standpoint. They all rank right up there. Playing in the All-Star game was what for me was a very, very big accomplishment. And and you always remember your first goal. Like, I mean, that was just, you just never forget that stuff. And playing in the All-Star game and winning the championship, and then coming, kind of going full circle and being a big part of championships and coaching and stuff. It was I've been blessed. I really have. I just can't. When I'm sitting, I think about it. We have these conversations, and I sit there and I said, Self, I said, for a skinny little guy that was too small to play and only got one kidney, they told me I'd never play. I didn't do too bad. And I sit there and I go, I'm proud of what I accomplished. And like I said, my coaching, I was blessed to have a GM like Mel, and I was blessed I had good players. You're only as good as your players and the people you surround yourself with. And I think that's I'm going to philosophize now a little bit, but I think that's when it comes to coaching nowadays in the National Hockey League, I really don't think you have to be a good coach. You have to be, now some people might take this the wrong way, but you have to be a yes guy. You gotta keep your owners happy. You have to win a little, okay? But the big thing, the most important thing is you have to keep your stars happy. If you don't keep your stars happy, they don't go to the GM. They go right to the top. They go right to the owner, and they say, "We can't play for this guy." So the owner sits there and he goes, now he calls the GM in and he says, we're gonna do something. So are they gonna get rid of a $7 million a year superstar, or are they gonna get rid of a six-figure coach? I think it's pretty simple to figure out. And there again, but you have to surround yourself with the right people in the National Hockey League. If you surround yourself with the right people, good hockey, knowledgeable people, and you can be very successful. Because when you look at the talent on teams, it's outside of a couple teams, they're all pretty much equal. And there's really no home ice anymore. Now you got all these arenas, they're exactly the same. You know, they're not like playing in the old Boston Gardens, that little pillbox, or going into Montreal Forum, or the old Gardens in Toronto, or the Spectrum in Philly. Yikes! You know, now they're all exactly the same. It's exactly the same. And you know, it's I don't know. I get rambling on sometimes about this stuff, but getting back to me, as far as I'm concerned, I was blessed. I was very, very fortunate. I got a couple breaks along the way to both and playing and coaching. You know, I got coaching wise, I got teamed up with some really, really good guys, and every little bit helps. You know, when you can do something that you love, it's, you know, I'm so probably my own worst enemy. As Davey and those guys, I used to get mad at them, and then I get mad at me because I didn't do this thing I thought I should have afterwards. And I was probably harder. I was a worse loser than they were. I kicked a few garbage cans.
We really appreciate this conversation. This was great. It was great to catch up with you, to learn a lot about you. I know most fans saw you behind the bench. A lot of them still come to games and still support. Remember the good old days, if you want to call them that. But it was great to it was great to catch up with you and meet you. We really appreciate you doing this, Ed. Thank you so much for the time.
Hey, thanks, Graham. I really appreciate it. We'll do it again sometime.